Hey, my friend, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Podcasting Podcast, where passion, purpose, and grounded strategy come together to help you amplify your voice without burning yourself out. And I'm Demetria, founder of the Soul Podcasting Collective, where my team and I support podcasters with editing and production, and also where I coach solopreneurs, creatives, and coaches who want to grow their podcasts with clarity and confidence. And if you ever want to reach out to me directly, please head over to soulpodcasting.com. You'll see a little pink tab on the right side of the screen, and that's where you can drop me a voice note, and who knows, I may feature it on an upcoming show. It really makes my day to hear your voices and just know who's listening on the other side of the mic. So please don't be shy. I love connecting with you. All right, before we dive in, my friend, how were your holidays? If you celebrated Thanksgiving here in the US, I hope it was restful and full of good food and good company. And to my Canadian listeners, I know you all celebrated back in October, but still, I hope that that season brought you moments of joy and just a pause and reset. And for me, it was actually a really welcome break because I gave myself permission to just slow down a little bit. And I got involved though. Even though I slowed down, I got involved in a few online projects, just lighter, enjoyable, and creative things. And one of those was to revamp my vlog on my YouTube channel and switching some things around so I can share a little bit more of my personal life again. And if you don't know this already, I actually have two YouTube channels, and one is my solopreneur and podcasting channel. That's where you're going to find these podcast episodes and some behind the scenes videos and more content about running a business as a creative. And my second channel is my faith-based corner of the internet, and it's over 98% women. These are my homeschool friends, homeschool moms, and this channel has been my digital footprint for over a decade. And even though I'm not homeschooling my kids anymore, I still have so much to share from that season of my life. And honestly, it was really time to help that channel to grow up with me and catch up with my own evolving. And speaking of growing up, my youngest just turned 18 this month. So yes, it was definitely a month of celebration and also reflection, because seasons, they shift so quickly. And when they do, your creative work has to shift with you. Not in a rushed way, not in a panicked kind of way, but just more grounded and soulful and steady. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. But if you do want to check out any of those channels, the links are in the show notes. I would love to have you hop on to my YouTube channel and see what's going on over there. All right, so let's get into today's episode. And today I want to give you something that most podcasters never really talk about a lot or hear. And it's that you don't need explosive growth to have a meaningful, impactful, profitable podcast. So you don't need those viral level numbers. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to hustle yourself into oblivion. And I know I just talked about all of the projects and things that I'm working on, but these are fun for me, honestly. And I don't see it as hustling, but I see it as more of, these are just things that make me happy. So this is where I kind of want to encourage you to not necessarily slow down and not necessarily bring your activities to a halt. I mean, we have to keep things going, right? And so it's going to take a little effort on our part, but I want to encourage you not to have the hustle mindset. I know that the industry makes it sound like the only way to make it is to grind hard, post constantly, juggle platform after platform, and basically turn yourself into a full-time marketing machine. Okay. I know that if you have an agency that you're working with, that you are aligning your business with, that can take some of that load off for you, it's going to be a lot easier for you to get a lot of this work done. And I'm talking social clips and repurposing and all the things that I talked about in earlier episodes. If you go back in my archives, I do talk about the general day-to-day aspects of making a podcast work and promoting that show. It does feel like a grind. There's a lot to it, but I don't want you to feel as a solo podcaster or solopreneur that you have to get on the hamster wheel of performance, because I want your podcast to feel like something that is an extension of you that you enjoy. And let's just be honest, most of us have real lives outside of podcasting. We have families, jobs, businesses, health to protect, and sanity to protect. So today I'm walking you through what I call the gentle growth strategy. It's how to grow your podcast in a slow, steady, and deeply rooted way that doesn't necessarily burn you out. first thing I want to talk about is depth over downloads. And one thing I always want you to remember is that depth will take you farther than downloads ever will. It's so easy to get caught up in chasing numbers and comparing your show to everyone else's show. But the truth is, I would rather you have 100 listeners who genuinely trust your voice than 10,000 who can't even recall your name. So when your growth is slow and steady, you give people room to connect with you more deeply. And that depth of connection, that emotional stickiness is what builds a show that lasts. Fast numbers might look impressive on social media, but depth is what sustains you and sustains your audience and sustains the mission of your podcast over time. And I can tell you right now that I'm depending on depth and relationships, and I'm being very intentional about how I approach my podcasting, especially now as we get closer to the end of the year. I'm recording this in December 2025. So I'm getting to that point where we're getting close to Christmas, and I know that the holidays is a time when I do want to wind down so I can gear back up for the new year. That said, I'm taking myself off of any hamster wheel that I've been on and giving myself room to kind of take a reprieve, to detox from any of what the hustle has done for me this year so that I can have that break that I need. And that also means slowing down a little bit on my social media. I might not be as active on Instagram as I've been back in April. And it's just that season of the year for me where I don't find it necessary to try to build as much momentum. So I built that momentum April through August, and I started to taper off a bit because I knew that I would be going back into the schools to work, and I knew that my life would get a little busier. So I put some things on hold, and now I'm really slowing down a little bit. So I haven't even posted on my Instagram in like 2 weeks. And so that is not by, choice necessarily. It's just because that's what happened in life, and I didn't get everything on the promotion calendar like I had intended to. I got a lot of things on my plate, and some things just fell off the wagon, just to be honest. But what's important to me is sharing my episodes with my list. And so I've kind of made my list building and promoting to my list and communicating to my mailing list subscribers as my highest priority. And then of course, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and all that stuff, YouTube Shorts, that is just kind of like second place for me. But I know that once it's uploaded to YouTube Shorts and my YouTube videos are up, that it's there for more longevity. It's got more of SEO building power, and all the stuff that we're looking for, all the juicy goodness of SEO is happening on YouTube because of the YouTube Google relationship. And I trust that to be more sustaining for me long term than I do Instagram. So I'm trying to put things in order and where I think I'm getting the most leverage, and I don't want to put all of my energy into, Instagram. So I love Instagram. I've enjoyed it this year, but I still feel like when it comes down to what is making the most traction for me, I'm going to have to say that I need to focus more on YouTube. So that's just my personal strategy and where I plan to go with things in the upcoming year. And of course, you'll have to decide what's best for you and your brand. If Instagram or TikTok is where you are finding your audience, so that's where you need to put your emphasis. But again, depth over downloads. Are you having those connections? Are you going into the DMs and communicating with everyone who's left you a message? Are you responding to your messages? I know recently I had quite a few on YouTube that I'd missed over the past 2 weeks, and I realized that I needed to respond to my subscribers, and they're asking me questions. They're wanting to meet up for coffee chats. And so that's a great place for me to really put my energy, because that's where I'm getting my feedback. So I'm focusing more on the depth of relationships as opposed to how many downloads did I get this month. Another thing to keep in mind is that gentle growth comes from rhythms and not hustle. So a lot of podcasters burn out because they are trying to sprint every single week. They're juggling, like I said, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, email, blogs, their podcast, of course, all the tools, right? You got to have everything, right? Get your hands on Riverside, get your hands on Opus Clip, figure out Descript, figure out Adobe Podcast, Adobe Premiere, Adobe Audition. There's so many tools out there. So honestly, it's just too much. Gentle growth doesn't require all of this chaos. It just comes from falling into a rhythm that actually works for you and your season of life. And I talked about that a few episodes back, about how important it is, especially for the women podcasters that I talk to. We talk about rhythms and gentle rhythms. That is going to be episode 86. I talked about how to stay consistent with podcasting when your schedule is packed. And I really get into detail there about some tips on how to manage a busy schedule, a busy life, and the rhythms and cycles of being a woman while integrating our business into our lives as women. And so if you're a woman podcaster, you're going to find that episode especially helpful. So that is episode 86. And even if you're not a woman podcaster, you're going to still find that episode, I believe, really helpful to you, because it's going to help you to see how to view your podcasting in terms of your personal life, your personal rhythms, your health, your needs, your mental health, your emotional health. How does podcasting fit into all of that? And it's the same with business. How does business fit into your life as an entrepreneur, solopreneur? All of this to me is tied together into more of like, how do we view our work that we do from a holistic perspective, that we're not necessarily separating all the different boxes of our lives, but learning how to integrate these things so that it makes sense for us. I think it's all about creating content with intention instead of urgency, and choosing one main place where you consistently show up. That makes it easy for people to share your message. That's it, really. Not 10,000 marketing ideas and not being everywhere at once. Although, yes, we want to have our brand be established in every venue that we possibly can, just to, have your username out there, have your name out there. I do have a TikTok account. I don't use it, but I have my brand name out there on TikTok, just in case I ever decide to use it. But again, I'm not using TikTok on a regular basis. So I just want to choose the place where I can show up fully in my fullest self, in where I am today, what feels good to me, which audience I'm serving best, and just flow with it and just find my rhythm. And that is what I call sustainability. And then thirdly, I think it's great to have a 20-minute weekly promotion plan. I know that's quite a few minutes, right? We like to say, oh, you can get this all done in 5 minutes. You just, send it off to TikTok and send it off to Instagram. But now if you're someone who barely has a sliver of time each week, and trust me, I've been there, and I'm kind of there right now, I want you to picture a promotion plan that only takes a few minutes. And I'm going to say 20 minutes because that's all you really need to start building momentum. And in those 20 minutes, you post a quick clip or a quote from your episode, you respond to a handful of comments or messages, or you drop your episode link somewhere visible like your stories, or you send something out to your email list. And then you personally invite one human being to listen, right? Not a mass audience, not a campaign, just one person. Those tiny intentional steps done consistently can bring more meaningful growth than an entire afternoon of scattered marketing tactics. Now, I chose 20 minutes because that is the amount of time that I feel like it takes me to do those specific tasks. But for you, it might be 10 minutes or it might be 30 minutes. But I do think that 20 minutes is a reasonable amount of time to set aside to do those things, respond to someone, send out an episode link, that kind of thing. It takes a little more than 10 minutes for me to do those things. 10 minutes is just my warming up, getting everything opened on my screens, on my tabs, just so that I can have a start and know what I'm doing. So it takes a little longer than 10 minutes for me. But some people say that, for them, it is really a quick process. So figure out how much time that takes for you. Try it out. See what a weekly promotion plan feels like for you after you've set your pace for week 1. Okay, this is my pace. This is what I'm doing. This is what it takes for me to roll out my promotion plan. This is my plan. Here's my checklist of things that I need to do to promote every week. And then by week 2, you'll kind of know where to go from there. And it's just so much easier the second time around, the third time around, and then it becomes part of your routine and your flow. So after you've established it, then you'll be able to see exactly how much time that takes you, and then just keep doing it. Rinse and repeat. Fourthly, growth doesn't have to cost you your peace. So the beauty of embracing slow growth is that it gives you your peace back. You're not rushing or forcing yourself or scrambling every single week to keep up with the latest strategy or trend. Instead, you have space and breathing room. You have the mental energy to actually enjoy being a creator without burning yourself out. And the thing I've learned over the years is that the shows that last the longest are often the ones that move the slowest. They're steady, they're grounded. For example, my homeschool podcast has been around for going on 14 years. And this show has been the longest running show that I've had. Although I've started quite a few before that one, but they didn't last for longer than 5 years. This one it's been a 14-year show, and it's had the longest amount of time to grow, but I have also been able to relax, and it's a steady show and it grows constantly every single month. It's a grounded podcast. It has roots. And so when your roots are deep, you don't have to topple over when your life shifts or when your energy dips or when a season changes for you, because you've already built something strong enough to weather it. So what I love about my homeschool podcast is that I can step away for months if I want to and not post a single thing. And when I come back, my audience is technically still there and they're still listening and downloading previous episodes and they haven't gone anywhere. So I feel really relaxed in that one. Of course, I'm not in a place with this particular podcast at the moment that I can walk away for 4 months, but that's something I could do, for a podcast that I've built over an amount of time. Part of that is building trust and rapport with your audience when they know why you've stepped away or they know that you're taking a break and you'll be back. I don't tend to get a lot of unsubs from my podcast itself. Now, my YouTube channel is a whole different ballgame, and I've learned some valuable lessons after, my silence on a YouTube channel for a period of time. And YouTube algorithms and just the way things work there is very different than a podcast. Your listeners are downloading to their devices, so they're not as likely, in my opinion, to just unsub from a podcast immediately because they haven't seen any updates in, a couple weeks or maybe even a month or two. Sometimes they'll just wait around to see will something happen. And then what happens is your podcast album cover shows up lower and lower in their app. When they open their app to Spotify or Apple Podcasts, they won't see your podcast cover art listed as one of the first episodes to remind them to listen to a show because you didn't upload anything. So rather than being reminded to unsub, they're just reminded to listen to the podcasts that are uploading their content. And so they're less likely, I think, to unsub from you just because you haven't uploaded in a while. And I do think it takes a while for people to start cleaning house and unsubbing from podcasts completely. So that gives you a little leverage where you could take a brief month or two off and not feel that you're going to lose a whole lot of subscribers because of that. Again, my point is that growth doesn't have to cost you your peace. So if you are in a season of life where it's overwhelming for you to keep up with your show at the moment, you can take a few weeks or months off and just let your audience know, and they very likely will stay subbed to you in their podcast player. So let's talk about why slow growth actually compounds faster. And I know it sounds contradictory, but slow growth actually compounds more powerfully over time than these quick, flashy spikes ever could. And when you build slowly, you're building trust. You're building an audience that sticks around, that shares your episodes naturally, that recommends you because they genuinely appreciate what you offer. Every month, every season, every year, your influence grows a little deeper, and those deep connections multiply far faster than any click-through ad or mass promotion. That's why I just believe in that personal invitations to friends and friends of friends, including using social media like Instagram to help you to promote, because you really want to make connections with people that care about what you're offering. And even on this podcast, I've interviewed quite a few successful podcasters who are going about things differently from each other. Everybody that I've had as a guest on this show has chosen a different route and a different way to promote their podcast. Some of my guests run $1 million ad agencies, marketing agencies, where they promote their clients through running huge ad campaigns. So they're going through click-through ads and mass promotion, and that is what works for them and what their clients need and have to have in the moment. And that's why they've been hired to do that kind of work. And I think that's useful and needed under certain circumstances. But I think for the average solopreneur who doesn't have maybe the mass marketing budget, I just believe in making those deep connections with your audience. And I don't think slow is small. So never get the two mixed up. Okay, don't think that slow growth is small growth. I believe slow growth is strategic. I don't think you have to grow slowly. In fact, I would rather you grow quickly, but slowly can be more sustainable, and sustainable growth is the kind that lasts. So when you're going into the world of podcasting, which I think is a very intimate world, you're sharing your life, you're sharing your hopes, your dreams, your pain points with your audience. You're being vulnerable with your audience. You're not just showing up as the advice giver, but someone that is a life giver because you're sharing your life with others. When you're doing that, it can be either very draining or it can be very energizing, depending on how you look at it and how you feel. But again, being vulnerable is not something easy to put yourself in the position to do. And to do this on a consistent basis every week, that is a lot to give. And so when you're making a commitment to your audience by showing up, the people who are supposed to hear your voice will hear the frequency and be totally engaged with what you're doing, what you're saying, and where you're going. You show up as a leader, and that's something that I love talking about on this show as well, is that leadership is a huge part of being a podcaster. You're leading your audience somewhere. You're taking them in a certain direction through your narrations, through your storytelling, and through your vulnerability, and choosing guests that hopefully help to add to the narrative that you're painting, the picture and the story that you're creating for your audience. And I believe this is strategic and sustainable, and we want your growth of your podcast to match the energy that you're bringing to the show. So what can you do this week? If you're wondering where to start, I'm going to simplify it even more for you. This week, perhaps you can choose one platform where you'll show up intentionally and consistently. You don't need to be all over the place. If you found out that Instagram or TikTok isn't your thing, then you don't have to stay committed to that this week. Maybe try something new. Maybe it's going to be YouTube. Maybe you're going to try, if you've been using TikTok, maybe you're going to try Instagram. Maybe you're going to switch over to YouTube Shorts. Whatever you're going to do, pick a place, spend some time there, figure out if it's LinkedIn. Then set aside just 20 minutes to promote your episode using the rhythm that I mentioned earlier. So you create one simple, shareable piece of content that's easy for your audience to pass along, and then reach out to just one person who you know would genuinely benefit from this week's episode. If that one person is a friend or family member, fine. But also, that one person could also be on your mailing list. So if you have a very small mailing list, don't worry, just send an email to them, and just think that as you're building your list, you're making connections with your audience, whether small or large. And above all, I want you to protect your energy. Your energy is the fuel of your podcast. So you need to guard it, and you need to honor that energy and give yourself the freedom to grow at the pace that actually works for your life. So, my friend, if this encouraged you, this episode, here's what I want you to do next. Go ahead and subscribe to my YouTube channel just for solopreneurs and podcasters. So I will be uploading more behind the scenes over the holidays. I want to upload more teaching videos and more resources that you won't find specifically on the podcast RSS feed. So you know that YouTube takes all of my podcasts through the RSS feed and just automatically spits those podcasts out onto YouTube straight from my podcast host. So if you guys are listening to me right now on Apple Podcasts, or if you're listening on Spotify or one of your other favorite players on your phone, right? Well, you can also find that same exact episode on YouTube. It won't be visual. You'll see my cover art for the podcast, and you'll know that this indeed is Soul Podcasting. When you click on it, it'll be on YouTube. But I'm also creating episodes that are not just, based on that podcast category on YouTube. I've created some other playlists, and so you can kind of dig through and see what I've got going, but I've got playlists about content strategy, branding, and website tips, because I used to focus a lot of my business activity on web design and branding. So I do have a whole playlist on that. And then, of course, my solopreneur and mompreneur lifestyle, that was important for me. Then, of course, I have all of my different podcasts. There's the Her Business Elevated podcast there, and there's Soul Podcasting podcast. I'll be adding more playlists and categories with time. But this is what I have so far. If you're interested in any of this, especially the content strategy, where I've been sharing a lot about digital marketing and content creation helps, you might want to check that out. I talk about blogging, figuring out your content types, finding your customer avatar, creating content that your audience will love if you want to have loyal followers, how to grow your business organically without ads, life balance hacks for busy content creators, evergreen content, how to find your niche and sweet spot as a solopreneur. So I'm just listing a few of my YouTube video titles. So that's just a few I did last year, but there's going to be more this year as I figure out my strategy for creating videos that actually get views on YouTube. And I'm learning a lot about what works on YouTube and what doesn't. So if you want to follow my journey there, I'd love to have you. And of course, if you're a mom or if you're faith-based, if you're a woman looking for faith-based content, I'd love to have you at my other channel as well. on Mom Zest, MOMZEST, where you'll see just a whole repository of videos. It's basically my whole life over the past 14 years. And some of the videos I find a little cringy. In fact, I think I may go back and put some on private because they're just so cringy. But it is my life as a homeschool mom, and it's how I raise my kids. And a lot of it is just super helpful for the audience that I was invested in at that time. And so, yeah, I'd love to have you check that out. And I'm currently going to be talking about faith and wellness, my health, fitness, my life as a solopreneur, what that looks like every day, how I'm planning to get more into my music and sharing that with the world. And then there's also some like Bible studies and scriptures and inspiration, teaching and that kind of thing. So you'll find a lot of that at that channel. Anyway, just wanted to give you some updates on what I'm doing. I didn't mean to start rambling. So if you've gotten this far in the episode, thank you for listening all the way through to the end. And again, if you're really trying to grow your show this year, I do want you to subscribe to my business channel. So thank you truly for spending this time with me today. And I'm going to be back next week with some more grounded and soulful support to help you build a podcast that feels aligned, sustainable, and fully yours. So I'll talk soon. Happy podcasting.